friends. It is Kase Ellers, and you're listening to episode 3 of The Conversation with Kase. And on today's episode, we are doing things a little bit differently because unfortunately, my originally scheduled guest had an emergency, and fortunately, he's fine, all is good. He just has to come on my next episode. And so I didn't really know what to do. I was kind of like, well, if I don't have a guest, then what am I doing a podcast about? And someone gave me the idea to do a Q&A episode. And I was like, that is amazing, because the cool thing about that is it gives my listeners an opportunity to ask questions, and I could kind of understand more like what they want to hear from me in the future. It kind of inspires me to think about who I could bring on as a guest. And, you guys get to know me a little bit more too, outside of me just being a real estate person. So I'm really excited to kind of go through these and read them off. I'm going to say the person's name and where they're from, but I will tell you, some people I've changed them because they wanted some privacy, and that's totally cool. And these don't go in any particular order. I'm just going to kind of read them off as they came in, but I'm excited to get started. So without further ado, let's get into some questions. Cara in Georgia asked, what do you go to for motivation? That's kind of a loaded question for me. I would say that I'm really good about being a self-starter. When I need motivation, it's really more on like a spiritual, psychological level, emotional level than it is that, I don't want to get something done that I need to get done, if that makes sense. And I always tend to lean on people. I love listening to Mama O, Oprah Winfrey. Like, you can never go wrong listening to Oprah. Gabby Bernstein is another of my favorite spiritual leaders. Chris Hogan's an amazing speaker. If you've ever heard him, I believe he's a John Maxwell coach. Jay Shetty, oh my gosh. So Jay Shetty really, really inspires me because he has this beautiful way of getting you to think prolifically about your life through video. If you research him, he does all of these beautifully done videos, and all of them have a theme, and they really get you to think about life's precious moments. And I would love to do something on that caliber one day. And it definitely motivates me, not just from a feel-good standpoint, but it shows me how people could actually create a lot of abundance for themselves by helping other people. So I hope I answered that okay. Danielle from Michigan asked, what are the top, quickest, and easiest home improvements that build equity? Okay, so the easiest one that I think you all know I'm going to say is paint, right? Going in and painting and updating colors, I mean, it just freshens your home. It makes it look cleaner. And it could really just change the whole vibe of your property. Especially even if you're doing like the outside, the curb appeal could make a really, really, really big difference. I would say the second thing that you could do on that same vein is focus on, your landscaping and maintaining that. You don't have to spend a lot of money like to add mulch or some plants just to keep the outside clean, because when people pull up, and whether or not you're selling your home, if it doesn't show well from the outside, they have a bad perception of it on the inside, when it could be the complete opposite. But my favorite thing to do in a home to give it the most radical transformation for little money is just to go in and change things out like hardware. So doorknobs, the knobs or handles on your cabinets, as well as light fixtures, because design always changes. It's very fluid. Probably about 10, 15 years ago, warm colors were really in. You saw burgundies, you saw deep greens, you saw tan, yellow, like that was really, really common. We just went through a gray phase. Now we're kind of in like an off-white phase. And brass was popular a few years back. So if you have, brass fixture in your dining room and you replaced it with a Sputnik, you know, black chandelier, I mean, it could give the whole space a new look without having to do any like major type of renovation. So I would focus on those little things because it will make the biggest visual impression without having, you wouldn't have to spend a lot of money to do those things. Katrina from Canada asked, what is the craziest thing you'd like to do one day? Oh gosh. So I'm kind of a risk averse person. Like, however, I don't know. I have this like fantasy in my mind that I could go to California, steal a Porsche, go to like crash like the Grammys or the Emmys or some sort of celebrity party, get a selfie with Kim Kardashian, avoid the police, and parasail along Malibu. Like, I don't know why. I had a dream about that one time actually. And my mom said, if you're going to go to jail for something, like make it a big deal. So I don't know. I haven't given much thought about like the craziest thing that I would do, but if I was going to fantasize about it, I think that's what it would be. Daryl in Florida asked, how long do you think black stainless steel appliances will be in style? That's a great question. So again, design's always changing and shifting, and it's always funny, I think, with design or even fashion, how things get reused a lot. And one of the trends I saw in the late 2010s was we started going to black appliances. And I started to see it more and more, but what was interesting is I didn't see a lot of home builders really adopting it. Like it was usually something the consumer put in like later on because they thought it looked nice. And I've also noticed that there are some appliance manufacturers like Cafe Appliances. They're going to like white appliances with like the rubbed brass, like accenting on it. So that might be coming back in. It's very, I don't know. I feel like stainless steel is going to be around to stay. Like people love classic. Like subway tile will never go out of style. It is purely classic. Jennifer in Texas was asking, how do you connect with new people that you're coaching, especially when they get in their own way and don't want to listen to you? I think that is the question every single coach has, no matter if you're a life coach or business coach, real estate coach. And I think for me, someone told me one time, you can't want it more than the person does, right? So if you have someone coming to you and they want to get through something, they want you to help them take them to new heights, but they're not willing to put in the work, then there's nothing you could do. However, there are people who desperately want the help, and sometimes they need someone to guide them and help them see what they're doing to get them to the other side. And for me, when I meet with someone and I really listen to them and take in everything they're saying, and not just what they're saying with their words, but what they're kind of implying to me, like self-consciously with their body language, I tend to imagine who I could see them being in the future. Like I see their future selves, and I really try to dig into and hold on to that image of them. And that really, really helps me when you're working with a difficult personality who you could help. So I always tell other coaches and people who are in that field to, people will show up, the way that they want you to see them. And sometimes you just need to dig a little bit deeper, and you really need to connect with, again, the possibility that they're not seeing in themselves, but not get to a point where you want it more than they do. So that's what I do. And honestly, it's worked. I've had a couple of people make some really great breakthroughs that way. Steve in California asked, how do you gain motivation after experiencing the loss of someone close? So I haven't talked about this on my podcast before. And in fact, Steve, I really, really want you to listen to my next episode with Alex, with Alexander and Co Design, because we're going to go into that actually. So literally after Thanksgiving in 2018, I dropped my mother off at her home and I never saw her again. She passed away. It was very unexpected, but I felt very blessed because I had an amazing Thanksgiving and I got to spend that time with her. But I've been through a lot of death in my life, unfortunately. I lost several family members when I was young. I had a cousin who committed suicide. My grandfather died in hospice, which was a very hard thing for me to deal with. And then I lost my mom completely unexpectedly. So I think that first and foremost, you have to really sit with yourself and be okay with feeling what you're feeling. I think a lot of people like to rush through grief. I think a lot of people also walk through life not recognizing that they are grieving. But there are days where it's really hard. I mean, for a good week after I lost my mother, I was like in a complete state of shock. So I think the best thing for you to do, Steve, is to go and when you have a moment where you feel clear, when you're calm, think about what you want and think about have a moment of gratitude for that person in your heart. Ask yourself, how would they want you to live your life if they were still here? And how could that inspire you to move on to the next phase of this new chapter of your life? And I'm not saying it's going to help you like forget about it or, deal with grieving quicker. And honestly, you don't want to do that. You want to just take your time. But I know when my mom passed away, we were having a lot of conversations before that around what I was doing in business, whether I wanted to expand into Atlanta or possibly Los Angeles with real estate. And, she really pushed me. She's like, don't let me hold you back. And then it was just crazy because if she didn't pass the way that she did, and I don't know that I would have made the big changes that I made in my life as quickly as I did. So that would be my advice for you. Kimberly in Florida said, how do you choose the right exterior paint color for your house? That's a great question. And I'm going to say, I am the worst person when it comes to picking exterior paint colors. And I've done it for people before, but I tend to find I'm a very neutral guy. I love transitional design. So, I love white painted brick. I love off-whites. I love black houses. And so there's kind of like this like go-to color scheme I tend to stick with depending on the architecture of the home. But something that I learned throughout the years when you're choosing paint colors is you want to be able to use the elements that you have. So first and foremost, look at the color of your roof. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that, for example, they'll have a tan roof, a warm color, and then they will paint their house a cool color. And the stark contrast does not look attractive. You kind of want to pull off what you have. You also want to look at the color of your windows. If they're white, that might help. You might want to do a different base color for your property. And I also recommend that you go and look at what colors are in nature around your home. You can never go wrong pulling in a natural color that complements the house. So look at the foliage. If there's purples or yellows or different types of greens, like how could you use that as an accent maybe for shutters, or especially the front door? I love having fun colored front doors. Um, but picking exterior paint color is really tough. I don't feel like I'm always the best person to ask because, like I said, I just kind of tend to go neutral and trendy, and that always could change. Sarah in Florida, how do you cut through the noise and stand out in your business? Oh, that's a great question. When you're a business owner, and especially when you're in a field that is very public, you know, realtors, we have to self-promote, which to me, I really hate it. I don't like self-promoting. I kind of just want to be the person people choose because they know that I know what I'm doing and that I care about them. But you know, unfortunately, there are times people, you know, consumers are so overwhelmed with the noise and so many other people in the same industry. You have to do what you can to really stand out. And I think for me, I just went back to the basics of telling my message and just being as authentic to who I am as a business person and a person, and using that in my marketing and what I'm putting out there. And I think that's one of the best ways, like nowadays as a business owner, that you can attract the type of clientele that you want, because it's not just, you know, you go through the phone book and you pick a real estate agent or a lawyer or whatever. We're in the age of the influencers, and people are going online, they're researching you before they want to do business with you, and they want to like you first. And so I think anything that you could do to put yourself in a position where people could get to know you for you and then choose to do business with you, I think not only are you going to get more loyal clients, you're going to get the type of clients that you enjoy working with and that are going to respect you. So it doesn't matter what business you're in, that authenticity and not being afraid to be vulnerable to, you know, media, video, I think is important. Okay, so this is very straight to the point. Sex on the first date. This literally makes me giggle. So I don't know how many of you are friends with a gay, right? If you're not, you're friends with me, so it's okay. But I find it funny because I think the gays are notorious for this. My straight friends, I think they're a little bit more like this than they want to admit. But I think people nowadays just generally date backwards. Like, I feel like I want to go on a date, I want to be courted by somebody, like I want to have like the romance piece to it, but that just like totally doesn't happen these days. Like, people want to have sex and hook up first, and then they want to get to know you, which, whatever, it is what it is. I feel like it's just a reality. But that doesn't mean that like I'm that type of person. I personally have to really like trust someone and get to know them a little bit before I really like them. And sometimes it's really annoying, to be honest with you, because I have so many people who will go on like a couple dates and I'll start to really like them, and then they'll disappear, and then they'll tell me like years later, oh my gosh, I really liked you, but I didn't think you were into me. And I was like, well, just because we didn't like hook up on the first date doesn't mean that I didn't like you. I'm trying to be respectful of you. So no sex on the first date, but maybe I should. Maybe I should start having sex on the first date. We'll see. Justin from Georgia. Stephanie from Wisconsin asked, do you have any tips for dealing with stress when you can't control the outcome? Stephanie, that's a great question. So I needed to breathe just even thinking about that, which I really need to do today. I've been actually a little stressed out. So one of the best things that you could learn to do for yourself, especially when you're in a business like real estate and you don't have a lot of control over things, is to get yourself into a mindset and a space, whether that is meditating for 10 minutes or writing in a journal or praying or whatever you do. and to wish, hope, and pray that the outcome is what is good for all involved, and to release it. Because the more you release and the more that you give it to whatever higher power, of whatever lexicon you believe in, you know, the easier it is for the universe to come and support you. And I know that sounds a little hokey and weird, but I really believe in it. I actually keep a journal myself. And for me, I feel like it's my connection with my mother, even though she's not here. And um, when I just wish for things to work out for the best for everybody, they tend to always do it. So make sure you're taking that time and carve it out for yourself. And it's very hard when you work in, I don't know what industry you're in, but if, for example, you are working in real estate, a lot of times you're bombarded with people and problems 24/7. And so you have to make sure that you plan out that time for yourself. And again, just pray to your spirit guides, God, Buddha, whomever. Ask to be released from the outcome and focus on the solution that's good for everybody. Christy in Georgia asks, how do you use your gut intuition during a real estate transaction? And how do you handle a client going against that feeling? That's a great question. I think the best way I could answer that is, I know for me, I use my gut instinct to help me be proactive in the real estate transaction itself. So if there are things that concern me or I'm worried about for my client, I will make sure, to do my best to voice that to them and to just be proactive around it. And unfortunately, there are times you're going to work with individuals in real estate who they're not going to see eye to eye with you on everything. And I've certainly shown homes before to buyers who really like them, and I will give them every reason in the book why I don't like the house, and they still want it. So, I think the best thing is to never say "I told you so," ever, even outside of real estate. But I think at that point, you just have to release yourself from the outcome. If your buyers buy a house that you don't think is a good fit for them, but they love it, then you're doing your job, you're doing the best that you can, and just make sure that they have a great transaction, like the best one that they possibly can have. But don't be afraid to give them your opinion either. That's important. And I think a lot of our clients look to us for that. Lana in Florida asked, what would be one conspiracy theory that you would dive into that has, if you had endless funds to support your research? Ooh, that is an amazing question. I'm so happy you asked that. I first want to say I'm not a big conspiracy person. It's actually crazy to me the number of conspiracies that are floating around the world right now and the number of smart people who believe them. But it's kind of a tie for me. So I'm kind of a true crime person. If you guys want to check out a really great podcast on true crime, listen to the Mile Higher podcast with Kendall Ray. You could also Google Kendall Ray or put her into YouTube. She does really, really great videos. It's kind of like listening to stories with your best friend. And she brings just so much awareness to lots of different true crime cases. And I remember I was watching this one on the Johnny Gosch case. And Johnny Gosch was from Des Moines, Iowa. He was a paper boy who was mysteriously abducted and never found. And I guess the way that this whole conspiracy goes was that he was forced into, basically human trafficking. I don't know if he ended up getting away at some point, but somehow they think that he now works in the government and they've concealed his identity and he can't go back to his family because of whatever this crazy situation is. I found it really fascinating. There's just so much contrast in that case and a lot of coincidences. So you really should look into it. But I know his mother's fought really hard to really find out and figure out where he is. And that was just one that really drew me in when I watched it. And the other one, which is probably going to be my favorite and the one that I would choose, was the conspiracy that the RMS Titanic was switched with the RMS Olympia. And that was a huge reason why the Titanic sunk. So allegedly, back in 1912 or 1911, the White Star Line had multiple ships, and I guess at that point they were going through some financial difficulties. And if you look at a lot of the ships that they produced, they're all really similar. And the Olympic, I guess, is like the cousin of the Titanic. And not long before the Titanic was actually released and people bought tickets to go on it, the Olympic was actually involved with a crash. And because of the way that the crash happened, and even though the ship did not sink, they are alleging that the White Star Line rebadged the Olympic, damaged, made some edits to it to trick investors and the insurance company into, so they could pocket that insurance money and not build a brand new ship. And when I've looked at videos and pictures from the 1900s, which are not very clear, it is actually kind of interesting when they compare the pictures of the Olympic versus the Titanic, as well as there's one photo, if you really look at the hull of the ship, where it kind of does look like something had been done to it on one of the sides. But no one will ever know. I've always been obsessed with the Titanic. And it's, I don't know. I've had like some weird cosmic connection with the Titanic for a very long time. So anyway, Kim from Florida asked, is now a good time to sell your house? And Kim, the answer is always yes. I think the better question is it the right time for you? I get this question a lot lately because of coronavirus, everything else. And what was really interesting is I think a lot of people assumed that COVID was just going to completely tank the economy. It was going to completely tank the housing market. And so much of our economy is tied into real estate. And what was interesting, though, was while our economy has definitely been affected from COVID and millions of people have been affected by it, I'm not discounting that by any means, but the real estate market stayed strong because if you're comparing it to 2008, 2009, the reason the market was so inflated then and we had so many issues was because there was bad mortgages. There were people given mortgages who should have never had them, who were overextended. Recently, the interest rates have been the lowest they've ever been. I've seen some conventional loans in like the low threes. I've seen some like very, very high twos. It really just depends on your credit. But even so, I was happy in 2014 to get a 4.25 when I went to buy a house in 2010 and they wanted 6.5%. So the money is very cheap right now, and it is causing people to want to buy. Apartments are expensive, which is causing people to want to buy. And the inventory is less because more people took their homes off the market because they didn't want people going through them during COVID. And again, compared to 2008, 2009, and that era of real estate, people actually have equity in their homes now. So, they're not going through foreclosures and short sales and losing their backs. So if it's something you're considering, I definitely think that as long as you have an option of what you're doing next, go ahead and sell it. But depending on when you bought your home, I've been telling a lot of people to really consider looking at alternative real estate investments. So, if you don't owe a lot of money on your home, maybe consider getting doing a cash out refinance or, doing a home equity line of credit and look at other ways to purchase properties for cash flow for yourself. If you get a really good property manager and someone who cares and you do your research and your homework, you're not going to be the person getting the phone calls at 2:00 in the morning if the toilet breaks. You have the right team around you. It's great. It's a great fit. There's tax benefits, that sort of a thing. But the original question and your original answer, it definitely is a good time right now. Real estate's been going really strong. Robert from Georgia asks, how did you get involved with working with HGTV? Well, the true answer is I basically stalked producers and casting directors. Many years ago, they did a casting call for House Hunters. I reached out to the producer on the flyer. Like they had sent it out to like all the offices in Orlando some time ago. And I reached out to the lady. I believe her name was Andrea. And we just kept in contact for a long time. Like I had always wanted to be on House Hunters. It was a personal goal of mine. And it was funny because every single time I wanted to do it, it just wasn't the right fit. And it took 4 years of keeping in contact with that casting producer until we finally found like the right couple and we did the show. But I have to admit, I'm really disappointed because I would love to do more with HGTV. And in fact, I was supposed to do a show with them in March, and it was going to be a very special version of this show. And COVID totally ruined it. Like literally, the week we were going to film was the week COVID all happened and everything went to poop. So yeah, I mean, if you're interested in working more in television, I think the best advice I would give to anybody is first and foremost, make sure you're visible, make sure that you're telling your story and you're sharing like what your interests are with that audience. Because if you can build up an organic audience doing that, it does make it a lot easier for, you know, casting directors, if, you know, they're looking for people for a show, to kind of connect you in that space. I've even written what's called treatments for shows. So I've put together different concepts for reality television shows, competition shows. And while nothing's ever really like gone anywhere, you just never know. So I just say, like, it's all about the relationships. Don't harass people, obviously. Like, they're not going to like you. You check in once a year, or, you know, wish a casting director happy holidays. Like, they'll definitely think about you. Okie dokie. Amber from New Jersey asks, what motivates you to stay in real estate when everyone else is getting their license? I get this question a lot. What's really funny about it is, like, if I go back to my childhood, like I actually used to really want to be like an actor, movie director, if you couldn't tell. And it was funny though, because when I would start getting into something and then a bunch of other people did it, I would lose interest. I remember I used to design websites. I had a blog. And the second people started doing LiveJournal and all these other blogs, I just was like, it doesn't make me feel special anymore. And I think I just got to a point with real estate where, you know, my business is so different than it is now than it was like 2 years ago. And I think I got to a place where, you know, my business is more about helping other entrepreneurs create legacy businesses for themselves. So I kind of took the me component out of my business and made it about them, which I think helped. But I also had a mindset shift around business in general. And it was that I wanted to really focus on creating wealth for myself in real estate and not just being a real estate agent, and focusing on what my personal goals were and achieving those versus what everyone else is telling me the best of the best real estate agents do. Obviously, people do things for a reason and that makes them successful, but you don't have to sell 100 homes a year or 1,000 homes a year to be a success in your life. So just stay on track with what you have going on personally, and, you know, just work hard. And that's how I've kind of stayed motivated and everything else in my business. So what did you guys think of those questions? I thought they were amazing. And I really appreciate every one of you who participated and sent me questions to ask, because without those questions, I would not have had an episode today and I would not have known what to do. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. With the holiday season upon us, Thanksgiving being tomorrow, I want to remind everyone to think about how they are spending their money. And just remember that while for some people, they have not experienced any loss this year, some very fortunate people who haven't, but there are a lot of people who have. And the biggest impact you can make in your community is to support small local businesses. So the Saturday is Small Business Saturday. So think of ways that you could spend your money and shop differently for presents, for whatever you're doing this holiday season, because it will make the biggest impact for those local business owners who don't have the support of a big box brand behind them to keep their lights on. So just really think about that this weekend. And also, since we're in the Thanksgiving season, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who has been tuning in, listening, and becoming a part of the conversation with me. It truly, I feel humbled, and I have so much gratitude for all of you. I think I mentioned that this podcast, I only did it out of a suggestion, like someone told me I should try it and do it. And I really wasn't expecting to get the traction with it and the engagement that I've been getting to this point. And I wouldn't be able to do that without your support. So thank you so, so much. This has been the highlight of my 2020. And I really feel like I am living in my truth when I am doing this show and connecting with individuals like yourself. If you like today's episode, do me a favor and please follow me wherever you listen or get your podcasts, and rate me, because even if you hate my show and give me a 0, that actually will help me build up my audience and connect me with people like yourself. Well, hopefully not people who hate my show, but you know what I'm saying. So I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving, and I really appreciate you tuning in to the Conversation with Kase. I will see you next time.